Hi, I'm Dana Obleman, and it's time for this week's question. It comes from Nat, who writes, "My daughter is 20 months old and has never slept through the night. She's been sleeping in our bed now on and off for a year. My relationship is to the breaking point, and our daughter is exhausted. She will only let me get her to sleep with a feeding, and then I have to sit by her crib until she falls asleep. She'll then sleep in the crib for a couple of hours, but then wakes up and will not stop crying until I take her to bed, where she nurses most of the night until around 5 a.m., and then she will not go back to sleep after that. I'm exhausted too, and I find it hard to function. My marriage is in crisis, and I don't know what to do. I really need some advice that can solve this problem before it's too late." Well, your note makes me feel sad in general for you, Nat. And I see this a lot. I read it a lot on the blog. And it really upsets me. And it does because I think the bigger problem here is that your marriage is in crisis. I mean, I can totally understand that after 20 months of not sleeping well, the strain is there for everyone involved. And I really, I agree with you that you need to solve this problem before it's too late. And what would be too late is that things totally fall apart and your marriage is ruined because of it. No one starts out a family with the idea that it's going to ruin their relationship. You bring a child into this world to nurture your relationship and to fulfill your life, not to make it worse. And so, I encourage everyone out there who's on the fence about whether or not to solve their child's sleep problem to really have a hard look. And if you feel anything like that, where you're so exhausted you can't function, and that you're in a crisis and your marriage is in a crisis, then there's no excuse not to. I mean, the most important thing you can give your children is a well-functioning marriage. And I know I'm ranting, but I really feel strongly about that. I just think, it's something that has to be addressed. And also, too, if you're to the point where, you're really feeling the strain in your relationship, then it's important to get your husband on board and sit down and have a conversation about how you really need to get a better night's sleep, that your daughter needs a better night's sleep, and that it will make you feel healthier and happier in the long run, and really get him on board with it. Now, from what you've written, a lot of the problem here is the nursing sleep association. The fact that once she's in bed with you, you've written that she nurses almost all night long. So she's basically just using the breast as a pacifier, which doesn't really let either of you get a good night's sleep. Okay, so first of all, sit down, get a plan in place, get your husband on board, because there's a lot he can do here to help. Especially if nursing is the issue, then having your partner be involved is really helpful, because your child knows that they're not going to get nursed from their father. So that's a good person to send in for those night wakings where your baby's expecting to be nursed. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is that you start at bedtime. At least some good news is that she does sleep in her crib initially, so she's not, it's not totally foreign to her. Start with your bedtime routine. Examples of good routines are start with a bath, about a 10-minute bath, followed by getting into jammies. At 20 months, I really don't think she needs a feed right before bed. I would consider pulling the nighttime feed or replacing it with maybe a sippy cup of warm milk. Because she really relies on that nursing to get her, almost to sleep or to sleep. I would suggest you just pull it right from the routine. So after, maybe a bit of a story time, a few cuddles, kisses, goodnights into the crib, she'd go awake. Okay, and you can stay by the crib. You can sit right by the crib and say a key phrase and remind her it's sleepy time, and you can even do a little bit of touching. But you want to be careful that you don't actually lull her to sleep with touching, because then you're just replacing one prop with another. But you also want to work your way out of the room eventually as well. Especially at 20 months, you don't want her to think you're going to watch her every time she needs to fall asleep, or you're just going to be up, 5 times a night to go in there and sit down in your chair again. You do want her to get comfortable enough with going to sleep on her own that she's not going to expect you to be there every time she wakes up. So I would suggest you follow the stay in the room method, where you sit 3 days right by the crib, 3 nights in the middle of the room, 3 nights by the door, and then you're out. Night 10, you're out of the room altogether. Okay? And handle the night wakings exactly the same. And I know that there's sort of a time in the night where she really digs her heels in and really wants to come to bed with you, but you're going to have to push through that, okay? Take turns with your husband, or take nights, take it in shifts. Sit with her by the crib, keep reminding her it's nighty-night, that it's sleepy time. And at 20 months, depending on how, most 20-month-olds are very, their comprehension is high. They may not be able to verbalize much, but they definitely understand. So, just even at bedtime, you can tell her, you're going to sleep all night in your crib tonight, and in the middle of the night when you're in there, you're going to sleep in your crib. This is where you sleep. This is where you're going to stay. And be supportive, but you're going to have to push through that difficult time in the night. And I would pull all-night feeds, okay? I mean, again, I think we can agree that at 20 months, she doesn't need to be eating in the night, not even once. So it is better to just go cold turkey with the night feeds. I know it doesn't feel like it initially, but I just find it's way less confusing. If every wake up is just met in the exact same way, then it's very clear to the child. There's no surprises. There's no waiting for anything. It's just every wake up the same until morning. And then I wouldn't consider morning anything before 6 a.m. And if she's up then, good morning, turn on the lights, you're happy to see her, and you take her out of the room for her first feed. And I would even try delaying that by giving her breakfast first. Sometimes a toddler will wake up extra early, just really waiting and expecting that morning nurse. So by delaying it a little, you can encourage her to sleep a little later into the morning, and really break that whole association she has between eating and sleeping. Okay, that's going to be a huge one. Now, it's a tough job for me to tell already tired and exhausted people to now be even more tired and exhausted. I realize that, and it requires, people to dig really deep into what they've got left. But I do hear often that as long as a person knows that there's light at the end of the tunnel, it's easier to get through. I mean, right now you're just slugging along, every night's the same, you're sort of in this endless tunnel. So that is depressing, and that is hard to maintain. But if you make some steps and know that, geez, in a week it's going to be a lot better, I can dig really deep for a week, then that often gives people the motivation they need to stick with this and keep going. And also, too, celebrate your progress. You'll notice within a couple of nights, it won't be where you want it to be, but it'll definitely be better. And then you can really celebrate, wow, look at how far she's come already in just a couple of days. And again, that gives tired people the motivation to keep going. So I feel for you, I do, and I really encourage you to get started on this so that you're happier, your daughter's happier and more rested, and you can start, making the necessary steps to get your relationship back on track, okay? So thanks a lot for your question, and sleep well.